Hello and welcome to episode 95 of Communicast, the podcast dedicated to enhancing communication skills. I'm your host, Scott D'Amico, president of Communispond. Today I'm joined by Brendan Keegan. Brendan is a 6-time president and CEO, 21-time board director, 2-time best-selling author, world's most innovative CEO award winner, and the visionary leader behind bFearless Ventures, an investment and advisory firm. In this episode, we discuss the subtle shift between advocating and inquiring that wins over stakeholders, why you should play offense in communication, and the importance of leading with your key message. Let's dive in. Brendan, thank you for joining me today.
Scott, excited to be here.
My pleasure. Glad to have you. Before we jump too far into it, if you can, tell the audience just a little bit about you, your background, your career journey, and really the exciting stuff that you're doing today.
First thing I'd say is I'm a simple guy from New Hampshire. Grew up in New Hampshire, 1 of 6. Started my career as a programmer. I love technology. Went to RPI, and as I went through my career, I got told I was better with people in communication, which is an interesting topic for you. And that, I had a way of influencing people that I'd be better in account operations. I did that for a while. Then they actually said, you should really do sales. You're an effective communicator. You know how to influence people. People like you. So, I did sales. I never thought I'd do that. I loved it. Because what I realized is if you're doing sales at like a solution selling level, you're really not selling. You're just solving business problems through listening. I then, after that, went on to be chief sales officer at EDS. And then from there, I've been CEO of 6 different companies, all which were venture capital or private equity backed, where I'd go in and serve for a number of years, depending on where they were in their process and sell those companies. I retired May 17th of last year. I jokingly say that when my youngest, I have 2 kids, graduated high school, I wanted to graduate life with them. And now I'm just active serving on boards of different companies that I've taken an ownership stake in. United Autosports, an endurance racing team, Andretti Racing, Country Club, Crane Stationery. We've probably all heard of Crane Stationery, a logistics company, and an electric scooter company, which is pretty cool. And then I'm a senior advisor to a few private equity firms. And outside of that, I've got 2 great kids that are going to make a mark on the world themselves. I love going to their college lacrosse games. And I've been married 28 years now. So, and by the way, communications might be more important in staying married 28 years than in work.
I would agree, yes. In their career, maybe without those communication skills, but in the personal life,
you will not slide by. You will not slide by.
Oh, that's great. What an amazing journey from programming to chief sales officers, CEOs, now advising organizations, serving on boards. And it's really interesting to have that unique combination of technical skills and soft skills. You don't always see that. And with the company that I lead, we do a lot of work with folks that are in the technical arena where they're great at what they do, their particular skill. But when they put them in front of a client or they put them in front of leadership, right, the wheels fall off. The communication skills just aren't there. They can't effectively get across what they're trying to do or the implications of what they're doing. So it's always fascinating meeting folks that have both sides of the coin there. And I think you're a true testament when you do combine the technical with the soft skills, the sky's the limit.
I would agree so much. And and by the way, that's absolutely something that if it doesn't come natural, you can develop and learn and nurture those skills.
Spot on. Yeah, that's what we do day in and day out. It's very fortunate that you can learn these skills. Some people I think feel that they're born natural communicators. I've always felt that maybe there's a small part of that, but if you talk to those folks that feel like or seem like they have natural communication skills, chances are all throughout their life, they were given opportunities to practice. At a young age, communicating with their family, going to school, going to playgrounds, they were getting the reps in. And then along the way, they learned some technical skills to apply on top of that. But spot on. You can absolutely learn and develop and grow these skills.
Scott, I'm going to agree with you 99% on that. Because I have a theory on it as well, and you just nailed it. The only thing I would say is they weren't given those opportunities, they took those opportunities. In that, if you talk to someone, let's pick an age, 21, that's a really good communicator, odds are when they were in a management class or something and they had to give a presentation, they did it. And maybe somebody else did the research and said, here, you present. Or they ran for student government and they had to stand up in front of their schoolmates and say what their position was. They served as captain on a team. They volunteered in their community. And I feel really strongly that that's a skill that all of a sudden we go, wow, look at them. They're just natural at it. But if you were to dissect their high school and college years, I'm willing to bet their extracurriculars were a little above average. And they were the one that, they say, oh, you present, I don't want to. I'll write the paper. I'll do the research. I'll do this. So I agree with you 99%. I just think they took the opportunities as opposed to were given.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree there. And I would be willing to bet if you take those same folks and go back even younger, they were the ones where when they went to the doctor, their parents allowed them to talk to the doctor, the kids to talk to the doctor. When they were at restaurants, the kids were ordering their meals. So it's this combination of taking the opportunities, being provided the opportunities at a young age. And it's about reps. It's about practice. You have to get out there and practice these skills, learn from it, and continue to grow.
Man, we're thinking identical here.
Love it. So as we think about this idea of people that are strong communicators, they have really good communication skills. When you hear that, when someone says, Brendan's a great communicator, what's the image that comes to mind when you hear that somebody is a really strong communicator?
Well, the first thing that just comes to mind, I think, is they're good at giving a talk. They're good up in front of a large group of people. I think that's the first thing that comes to mind, to most people. But what I'd say is being a good communicator starts absolutely with being an active listener. And by the way, I put the word active in front of listening because there's listening. Well, actually, there's hearing, right? And to the married people, we know what hearing is. We know what listening is. But listening can still be a little passive. But do you actively listen? And can you make your message to somebody a little bit more personal because you listened to them, during the meeting, during the outing, and you brought something back later? Like that just really hits home with people. So I think when you say, oh, someone's Scott's a great communicator, I think the image is, oh, Scott's on a stage. But I sit there and say, hey, let's back up the stage. He probably actively listened to what's the conference? Who's the audience? What do they want to learn today? And you focused on those things and then put something together for that group that was very meaningful. A few other things are, communication. At the end of the day, a lot of our communication is to influence people. You're in a meeting and you have a view and, you want to get your view across. Well, you're trying to influence. So how do you communicate in a way that is simple and not complex? And I say that a lot of people will give this great answer. And sometimes, I'll have fun with them. I'll be like, that's outstanding. Now, what do you mean? What did you say? Like, what's the bullet point? They go, oh, I want you to do X. And I'm like, great. Why didn't you say that? And so what I'd say is make sure your message is really clear. But, if you think of a good communicator, I think you immediately go to the stage, but I'd back up. And then there's the whole writing side, which is a different side of communication than the speaking side, but something we should delve into as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of gold in there. So a couple of things, right? I think oftentimes when people have the thought that they're trying to influence, whether it's a one-on-one meeting or with a client or up on stage, they tend to overcomplicate things. They use jargon. They want to somewhat sound as the authority. And I think by doing so, they hurt their position because they confuse their audience, right? The core message gets lost is, what do I want these people to think, do, behave, act, right? Do differently when I'm done communicating. So I think keep it simple is one thing. And the other part of listening that it was something minor that you said that it really is key. listening isn't just what we typically think of with our ears and even with your eyes, right? I can listen to the body language with my eyes, but you said something like Scott probably listened for the conference or listened about the conference, meaning to me, preparation and research plays a part in that active listening because
Yeah.
that enables me to tailor my message. I know who's going to be there, right? The persona or the profile of the audience. So that gives me something to kind of think of. Years of expertise, the things that they're focused on, their goals. So you listen so many different ways, just truly with your ears. And yeah, writing is a huge thing that we see, especially when it comes to business communication. There's a massive disconnect, I think, going on, especially with everyone's favorite thing, email, with one, the volume of email, and then two, how people write emails to try to get their point across. We just waste so much time with it.
We do. We do. Nope. I agreed. Another point that I'd say, once you do the active listening and such, another really important part in the simplicity, so I talked about that, is taking your audience on the journey with you and, storytelling. And, I wrote an article a while back about a board meeting I had, and I was in a board meeting and the article wound up being about communication and advocacy versus inquiry. So, one of the younger board members in the board meeting, after the meeting came to me and said, I'm a little upset. Like, I made this suggestion, the board didn't listen to me. And then another board member made pretty much the same suggestion, and we listened to them. And I said, yeah, your suggestion was very similar. And they go, I kind of think people aren't listening to me because I'm younger. I said, no, that has nothing to do with it. You advocated. You just came out and said, we should do X. And you were so strong that you kind of put everybody on the defensive. And we're like, oh, okay, we'll consider that. And I said, if you look at what Brad did, the person's name that was successful in the meeting, name was Brad. Brad asked people, hey, do you guys think we need to make a change here? And it's like, yes. Okay, we probably have three options. And I just think the best option is option two. And now I'm just kind of doing a little bit of role playing. And you're like, well, two's good, but what do you think of three? We had a debate. Yeah, two's probably good. Next thing you know, we're deciding on two. And I said to him, you advocated, this person inquired. They took us on the decision journey with them. And they made us a part of the process. So, I can't tell you how many times I tell people, inquire more and advocate less. But by the way, as you inquire, you should be inquiring towards your end goal. Mm-hmm. If your end goal is, I really think it's option two, great. Convince people, have we got a problem? Yes. Do we have options? Yes. Is option one good? Yes. Is option two better? Yes. Is option three better? No. Okay, let's go with option two. Everyone now is part of it. And most likely you've been able to influence them because you brought them on the journey.
When it comes to communication, it is amazing how big of a difference approach can matter.
Oh, God,
Tone
absolutely.
Can matter. Word choice can matter, especially at big organizations. There are literally teams of people. Now, probably it's AI doing this, but there's teams of people that are testing messages, the alpha beta testing with one word difference in a subject line. Or if they're pushing out a promotional activity, half off versus 50% off, or whatever it may be, right? Communication is so nuanced. You have to take a thoughtful approach to it and learn, right? What is working as I'm communicating with people? What type of response am I getting? So, I guess kudos to the person for recognizing that my ideas aren't landing, but other people's are. So it's a great learning opportunity where some people I think would just shut down and not do it. But it's important to kind of get that feedback, to be aware of yourself and then aware of how others are reacting to you.
And by the way, I knew exactly what their challenge was, is because when I was younger, I was an advocator. I went to a meeting and I thought they want me to answer the problem. I just thought that. I wasn't as good at realizing I want to bring the whole room along with me. And so it's just something that's a journey that I personally went on. So I'm very, very familiar with it. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm in other meetings where I walk in and I advocate. This is what we're going to do. Like during COVID, during COVID, there were times you just had to advocate. Hey, we're in a crisis. This is what we're doing. It's not a time, for inquiry necessarily. So just there's both, but I think if we learn to practice inquiry more, if we learn to go on a communication journey in the meeting, if we bring the people in, and by the way, if there's a non-supporter, that's my favorite person to rope in during it. Mm-hmm. And by the way, if you know what they don't like, lean in. If you know that they don't think option 2 is right because whatever, say, hey, one possible negative of option 2 is X. And we have to recognize that, it's not perfect, but it might be our best option. And you've really kind of shown some empathy mm-hmm. to that person. And say, hey, Charlie, what are your thoughts on option 2? And it's like, oh, I'm really glad you brought up, that X is negative because I think that, is a challenge for option 2. Now, instead of them being a non-supporter, now you're moving them to neutral.
And that's where storytelling really can come into play to get people's buy-in. So if you have a scenario like there is, at a prior organization, we were faced with something similar where we had multiple options and none of them were perfect, but we had this scenario where we worked with our best option. Whatever, if you find a way to pull from your past experience, or even, the best storytellers are able to find some sort of way to take something that might not be relevant, a personal anecdote, and tie it into what they're talking about. I think that's a great way to influence people to get that emotional connection and help people, I think, sometimes understand complex topics.
Absolutely.
Brendan, with the experience you've had throughout your career and probably in some of the work you're doing with organizations today, understanding the skill set that's required for employees to really be successful in their careers and grow. And it's likely changed over the years, and especially over the past 5 years, we've seen a shift in skills that are required as we've done more remote work and hybrid work and back to office. But as you think about some successful employees that you've worked with, what are some of the key communication skills, maybe in addition to the things we've already hit on today?
Yeah, one of the things that I'd first say is, just having a position, taking a view. So, your boss, your leader, your manager wants you to have an opinion. Now, you might say, Brendan, I don't know. They don't really value my opinion. They might not value your opinion, but they want you to have one. Mm-hmm. And so the first is, go in knowing what your position is. By the way, on some, you might be like, I don't have a position on this particular topic. That's perfectly fine too, because you just don't have an opinion. I can't tell you how many times I've had HR come in and they go, hey, what do you think of this? And I'm like, what do you think of this? You have more expertise to make the call than I do. And just by doing that, it instills confidence in them. But what I'd say is the first is communicating in front of a group. And I'm going to go back to 1998. There was a gentleman who was one of my mentors. His name was Gary Fernandez. And I thought he was part of the Holy Trinity. And he could walk into a room and you would say, who's that? He could sit at a table at a boardroom and command it. He could stand up in front of 500 people and he just had this great way about him. And I asked him, I said, I want to emulate you. So the point I'm getting at is emulate somebody, pick somebody in your network that you can say, this is how they communicate. Find a great communicator and learn from them. And I went as far as to say, Gary, I want to be able to walk in a room like you. I want to be able to speak at an auditorium as you. He goes, oh, great. Let me give you the name of my presentation coach, Nick Dowley, by the way. And by the way, Nick is still in business. And he said, let's set you up with Nick. So for years, Nick and I, as I moved around the country, I moved 12 times, he would fly in on a weekend and would go to a hotel, would rent the ballroom, and I'd work. I'd do the work, I'd practice. And, you start off and it's like your hands are busy, great. And then it's like, your voice. And it's no different than a pro athlete. It's no different than a celebrity pianist. You're working on your craft. But if we think of all the education we have, how many hours did we put into communication classes? Like how to speak, how to influence, how to talk, how to write. I would say very little.
Mm-hmm.
Very little. I would argue that we probably put more time into algebra, which, although that's great, we may not be using it than we did communications. Now, let me just flip over, if I can take another minute, and talk about the writing side. So here's my theory on writing. We all kind of got ruined by our 6th, 7th, and 8th grade English teachers because we wrote the dog runs, the cat is tan, the ball is red. And then we got taught, let's write an essay. And then we got told, write a 2-page essay, write a 5-page essay. So although that's wonderful, it actually hurts us in the business world.
Mm-hmm.
And the concept that journalists are taught is bluff, bottom line up front. And the bluff concept is, hey, if you write a 500-word article about a train crash, and all of a sudden, an hour before press, there's a bigger train crash, your 500-word article is going to get cut to 300, and they're not going to call you. So make sure that you have the bottom line up front and that it's not in words 400 through 500. So, I'll get an email from somebody and you're like, man, I'm in the 3rd paragraph. Like, what does this person want? So write simply, simple words, simple lines, and be very clear what you want and put that up front.
Mm-hmm.
Brendan, thank you for taking the time. I am looking for an internship. Immediately, I know, oh, this person must be a college student. They're looking for an internship. I can make a decision, do I delete it? Do I respond? Do I pass it on to somebody? But if they give me a paragraph of, you've had a great career, I've really followed you, and all these pleasantries. The second paragraph is, these are the 18 things I've done in my college career. And the third paragraph is, I'm looking for an internship. I don't know.
Might not have to.
I might not get to the third paragraph. So just on the writing, like put bottom line up front, be simple, be direct. People aren't really reading, they're scanning. And then this is a message to everybody. Texting is wonderful. I think texting is just tremendous, but it doesn't give us the excuse to absolutely misspell every other word. Mm-hmm. Just if it's a business one, if you're sending it to your family, your friends, kids, whatever it is, that's different. But if you're sending a business one, just take the extra 5 seconds and spell check it. And so just little
things that you do will compound and have a big impact, right? Just simply doing that quick spell check, making sure that it's easy for somebody to read. I'm sure you're like me, your inbox is bombarded every day with legitimate messages, spam messages, sales messages. You have very little time. And similar to the bluff, we teach something basically called the MADE format: message, action, details, evidence. So that I could send the same message to multiple people in the organization, and somebody just needs to know the key message. Somebody else might be part of the action, and then that's it. But other people, they're going to need the details. They're going to need to go through and look at the evidence. Brendan, we need to make a switch on our CRM program. It's outdated, right? I need approval to move forward with this. Here's why, blah, blah, blah. Here's some links to the new thing that we're looking at. I've kind of very clearly stated what's going on. What do I need from you? And if you want to check out all this other stuff, you can. Chances are you're too busy. You don't necessarily care. You trust my judgment. You can kind of move forward, and then you can loop other people into that same message so they can see the details and evidence if they need it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like that small internship example. When I read that in the first line, I now can, as you said, I got the message. I can make a decision, continue or not continue.
Yep.
As opposed to if that were in the third paragraph, I wouldn't have been able to make any decision because I wouldn't have known what the message was. By the way, I'm gonna practice that MADE. I like that. That's very slick of you, Scott.
Makes a huge difference when you're sending out your communications. One of the things that you touched on, you mentioned a mentor that you have, and I want to point this out because I think it's something that a lot of people don't do. Typically I ask everyone, and it's kind of a nice segue. I always ask somebody from someone who's influenced their communication
Uh,
style throughout their career. And usually I get all kinds of great answers, family members, authors, bosses, colleagues, friends, whatever. But the one thing that you shared that I don't know that honestly anyone else has shared before was you saw something in this person, you sought it out and asked about it. Most people are passively picking up things from people. I like how they do this. I like how they speak or their cadence or how they pause. And then they start to incorporate it, but really being thoughtful and proactive with, Brendan, I really like XYZ, or Brendan, I
yeah,
want to capture a room's attention when I come in, whatever it is. Don't be afraid to ask people that. I would say
absolutely.
99.9% of the time, if it's somebody that you work with, they're going to be receptive and say, yeah, let me tell you about what I do or how I got there, or connect with this person. I think small nuance can make a big difference there.
Absolutely. And, he didn't view it as a weakness. He viewed it as you're trying to get better. Now, I will also tell you one creepy thing, and I hope he doesn't listen to this. He also dressed very well without being flashy.
Mm-hmm.
Like he just looked important. Like if you were in a cocktail reception, you would say, "Who is that?"
Mm-hmm.
So we were, flying to a meeting once, and when he fell asleep and his jacket was on the chair, I actually looked at what kind of jacket, but I know I'm kind of making fun of myself for being a young 28, 29 year older, but like emulation, like if you find somebody that has what you want or skills you want, why wouldn't you like just be a student of them? Just I took so much away from them.
Yeah, there's so much that we can learn from the people that we work with, whether they're a boss or on the same team. And good environment, bad environment. One of the prior guests said something that I always enjoyed. This idea of bloom where you are planted is, wherever you're at, whether you're in a pot with lots of sunshine and great nutrients, take all that in. If you're the dandelion growing up through the crack in the sidewalk, it's pulling in nutrients from wherever it can. And if you're in a bad environment, what can I take from this? If I have a toxic manager, what can I learn about what not to do when I'm in this type of position? So I think it's soak it all up and definitely take advantage of it.
Yeah, so I agree. I agree. I like that.
Brendan, as we're wrapping up here, what piece of closing advice would you have for folks that are listening to this, really just around the general importance of developing their communication skills, and as we touched on earlier, the impact they can have not only on their professional lives but their personal lives as well?
Yeah, my message is hyper clear. Play offense. Play offense. Like be the one to say, I'll make the presentation. Be the one to volunteer to talk. Be the one that takes the opportunity. And I say that in like, let's say four of us worked on a project and we all spent exactly the same amount of hours. And Scott, you presented it. And there's 100 people in the audience. I can tell you, you're going to get 50% credit, and the other three of us are going to get what, 16.7 each. It's just someone's going to say, someone's going to come up to you and say, Scott, great job. And I could be sitting there going, oh my gosh, like I put so much good work into that. So like, but that is reality. So play offense. And, I hear so many people say, oh, I don't like to, excuse me, I don't like to get up and talk. Get over it. Get over it because you are holding yourself back. So play offense in any way you can. Get out there, emulate. But if you're playing defense and you're sitting on the sideline, you're not giving your chance. You're not giving yourself a chance to achieve your greatest achievements.
This idea of playing offense, and I think kind of getting over your fears of, I would just say,
Absolutely.
communication in general, whether it's public speaking. Some people in general are afraid to send an email about something, right? They just don't want to put themselves out there. If you are one consistently doing it, you're doing it for the right reasons, and you are developing those skills. So I can tell you how many people I've heard from that their ability to deliver a presentation has transformed their career. As the example that
Absolutely.
you mentioned, right? people start talking about you, hearing about you, that your name is getting circulated more in the office. Same thing with your email communications, right? If you're the person that's using that MAID type of format or that bluff format in your email communications to senior leadership versus the person that's, scrolling 5 paragraphs before they even get to anything that resembles a point, it's going to set you apart and I think set you off on a completely different path.
Agreed. Well said, Scott.
Brendan, once again, I appreciate your time, everything that you've shared here. If folks just want to kind of get in touch with you, learn a little bit more about you and your work, what's the best way for them to do that?
The best way is probably connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm Brendan P. Keegan. You can follow me on Instagram. I'm BPK Fearless. I've got my own website, Brendan P. Keegan. You can reach me there. So just reach out, and literally every day I respond to every email. I respond to every LinkedIn message. Now a lot of them are no, this is not a good fit because there's only so many websites I can build. But reach out and I'll absolutely respond to you.
Perfect. I will be sure for those of you listen, there will be links to those in the show notes. You can check it out and connect with Brendan. Brendan, once again, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Thoroughly enjoyed the conversation.
Scott, keep doing what you're doing, man.
Take care. Special thanks again to my guest, Brendan Keegan. Brendan's points about active listening and storytelling to writing sharper and playing offense truly embody the core tenets of effective communication. As we wrap up, remember that mastering communication is a continuous journey. Make sure to stay connected with Communicast by subscribing so you can benefit from conversations with future guests. If you found value in today's episode, I'd be grateful for your support. Leaving a rating or review is a fantastic way to let us know the impact this show has had on you. Thanks, and have a great day.